In this video, I'm going to try to show you how to extract everything you need to know about Sheila from just the last couple of pages of the play. And it's also a way to demonstrate how to approach the extract question, because I will focus on everything she says and try to extract as much information from it as I possibly can. As you'll remember from my other videos, I want to have more than one interpretation of my character in order to get into the A and A star grade. So if I start here, the worst part is, but you're forgetting one thing, I still can't forget. This is a really curious phrase because on the one hand it suggests that she's learnt the inspector's lesson and has remembered, remember is one of the key words the inspector keeps using with the family. But looked at another way, I still can't forget suggests that deep down perhaps she wants to forget. And this is going to be really relevant to us when we consider how far Sheila has learnt the lessons that the inspector has taught. In red here, Sheila reiterates that lesson. Everything we said had really happened. If it didn't end tragically, then that's lucky for us. So Sheila's view, like the inspector's perhaps, is that they've committed these moral crimes against any girl, and whether it was the same girl or not is irrelevant, and whether that girl died or not is irrelevant. They've still done the same heartless things. That surely is the message that the inspector brings, and the lesson that he wants them to learn. The effect of this is quite interesting. Her father now calls her woman instead of girl or child. So Priestley deliberately presents Sheila as growing up in her parents' eyes here, and this offers us hope for the future because the action takes place in 1912, but if as a much older adult in 1945 Sheila has taken on the inspector's message, then the hope for England and Britain is great. She will have accepted the inspector's message and be looking for a socialist future, which is what Priestley wants for Britain in 1945. Okay, so far so good, but then we return to that alternative interpretation. So Sheila says, I want to get out of this, meaning escape her family's denial, the way they're talking. Again, they don't accept the inspector's message. However, an alternative way of looking at this is, I also do not want to accept the inspector's message. So the this becomes the lesson that she's learning, and she's still, underneath it all, perhaps resisting. So we've got two competing interpretations. Then we have this very revealing inverse syntax. So if Sheila was trying to complain that she wanted to escape her family's way of talking, she would say this: the way you talk frightens me. However, she changes the order. So again, I think this is her subconscious fear taking place. I want to get out of this, it frightens me. What she wants to escape is also the inspector's lesson. Well, why is that? Why would she want to escape that lesson? Well, for the simple reason that learning the inspector's lesson means going against her family and going against Gerald, losing that secure future that seemed bright only an hour ago at the beginning of the play. At the minute, the inspector wins out. Passionately, Sheila says, you're pretending everything's just as it was before, and she is back reiterating the inspector's message. Now she tries to distance herself from her family. She doesn't acknowledge them by name or as parents, but calls them these others. So her very language tries to distance herself from her parents. Now she starts to use several rhetorical devices, techniques that you would use in persuasive speech. So we have the repetition of so, followed by the repetition of nothing in order to emphasize her point. she begins to list things in threes. Nothing, nothing, nothing. And she employs irony here, stating something as a fact, but meaning the opposite. So nothing really happened, so there's nothing to be sorry for, nothing to learn. We can all go on behaving just as we did. Irony, again, a rhetorical device. Now, her language sets up a dichotomy, a contrast between herself and her family. I tell you clearly distinguishes her opinion from her family's. And then the reiteration of you, you've, your, again a rhetorical feature, listing it in threes and trying to show how they are different from her and how they, her family, are wrong. Sheila becomes a proxy or a mouthpiece for the inspector. Whoever that inspector was, it was anything but a joke, she says, repeating his message. You began to learn something. Now she is repeating his purpose. And Priestley is also using her to set up his ending of the play. You're ready to go on in the same old way, and if the family persist in going in the same old way, then that second death of the second Eva will occur. And the inference here is that if the family had learnt their lesson, then that second death wouldn't occur. We are destined to repeat the same mistakes, Priestley seems to be saying, unless we learn from them. Again, Sheila resorts to a pattern of three. I remember what he said, how he looked, what he made me feel. A typical rhetorical device of persuasive speeches. And she also allies herself to the inspector. The I is allied to the he, to the he, to the he. Again, three he's, and she's allying herself in her language to the inspector, and then contrasting that. Me is against you, and I can't listen to any more of it. Again, trying to distance herself from her parents. The pattern of three is also something she's picked up from the inspector's final words, fire and blood and anguish. So she's mimicking him in her own structure of syntax and language. But despite the fact that she seems to be overwhelmingly in favour of what the inspector has said, we still have this inversion of the syntax. Instead of the way you talk frightens me, it frightens me the way you talk again, concentrating on her fear, which comes at the beginning of the sentence. And this isn't just a fear of how her family are so wrong, it's also a fear of accepting the inspector's lesson. Perhaps the reason that she can't listen to any more is that she's worried that they may eventually persuade her that the inspector was wrong, even though it feels to her as though he must have been right all along. And then we turn to Sheila's final words in the play. She's been offered her engagement ring back again by Gerald, and he is, if you like, re-proposing to her. Only an hour ago, Sheila had confirmed to her that Gerald had had an affair with Daisy. In most relationships, this would cause a catastrophic rift. And on the face of it, it has done so here. So my 3 here symbolises the pattern of 3 that Sheila is still going through. No, not yet. It's too soon. I must think. But we'll also notice that each sentence is 3 syllables long. Very final. So it seems that she is completely rejecting Gerald, not just because of his affair, but also because Gerald has not learnt the inspector's lesson. But there is an alternative interpretation. Look at this word here, yet, not yet. A strong indication that she is going to accept Gerald's proposal. And that is a strong indication that she won't fully accept the inspector's lesson. She'll believe it all right, and she'll know that he's right, but it'll be far too difficult for her, perhaps, to follow through what that lesson means, which is to reject her family and to reject Gerald. And this also might explain why the second death has occurred. The inspector has allied himself most closely with Sheila. He talks about the young being impressionable and how they often have the most powerful impact on them. And if he can't fully persuade Sheila, then he can't fully affect the future. And similarly, when she says, "I must think," this could mean just as easily, I must think of a way to accept Gerald back that still squares with the inspector's teaching, which to us at the end of the play seems impossible. She can't accept Gerald and also accept the inspector. Why? Because Gerald has so clearly rejected the inspector's views. So when we get to the end of the play, there is the conventional interpretation that Sheila and Eric have completely absorbed the inspector's views, that the younger generation are full of hope because they have seen the light, as it were, and have realised that we're all responsible for each other. There is going to be a socialist future. But this is 1912, remember, and that socialist future won't come about until 1945. So another way of looking at it is saying that actually Sheila's generation and Eric's generation fail. They don't bring about a change. It's the younger generation who are in the audience in 1945 who will.